least. The receptionist replied that both the Hedgerow Slime and Bubble Wisp extermination quests paid 4 silver coins. Chris reflected that even the lowest-paying bronze-ranked quest offered a reward equivalent to defeating 20 goblins. Bronze-level quests clearly provided much greater rewards when judged by their payout alone. Although accepting the Lost Cattle Bird quest seemed like the best choice, he suspected there had to be a reason for its unusually high reward. If it took too long to complete, there was always the risk of running out of money before finishing it. With that in mind, he began considering which quest he should choose. At the beginning of Chapter 8, Chris went to the location. There were many bugs, and the area resembled a forest. He passed through the trees and walked forward before spotting a creature ahead. It was a Hedgerow Slime. He covered his mouth at the disgusting sight. He had chosen this mission because he believed it would be easier, but he might have been wrong. Even if he managed to defeat it skillfully, his weapons and equipment would still be tainted by its stench and might need to be discarded. Although he wanted to give up, the amount of money he currently had left him with no choice but to push through. The creature was as tall as he was. The dark spot within its body was its core. He could not be careless because he did not know which side was its front. Chris hid behind a tree before dashing toward the slime, intending to finish it with a single decisive strike. He struck its core, but it immediately released spikes. As he dodged them, he realized with frustration that one strike was not enough to defeat it. He lunged into the air once more,
slime, man. It has no body,
and swung his sword. He struck forward and shattered its core. The slime exploded, and its foul juices clung to his sword. He vowed never to accept this mission again. From his failure in choosing the Hedgerow Slime as his target, Chris learned a lesson. A month passed without him encountering any difficulties while completing bronze-ranked missions. His afternoons were spent completing mission reports and preparing for the next day. His remaining time was devoted to practicing swordsmanship and acquiring knowledge about plants at the Healing Guild and Herb Shop. Every day, he earned at least 4 silver coins and eventually managed to save 20 gold coins. Even though he had worked without rest for an entire month, he had never imagined he could earn that much. He returned to Rugens, who greeted him. Rugens asked whether he had come to look at the weapons again. Since then, Chris had visited Shichifuka many times. Chris explained that he had come to pay for the book and apologized for making Rugens wait. Rugens asked whether Chris had enough money now and remarked that he could simply pay whatever amount he could afford in advance. Chris assured him that he had enough money to pay in full and that there was no need to worry. Chris
That's fast, though.
reflected that if he had not possessed the book Memoirs of the Botanist Otto back then, he probably would not have realized the potential of those poisonous plants. He felt extremely grateful to Rugens for selling the book to him. Rugens accepted the payment and thanked Chris. Chris believed he should be the one expressing gratitude because the book had been truly useful, and he thanked Rugens. He also had something he wanted to ask. Rugens asked what it was. Chris asked whether the shop sold necromancy scrolls. Rugens repeated the term before standing up and walking to the cabinet. He opened one of the drawers and took something out, explaining that although it was old, it was indeed a necromancy scroll. Chris asked which necromancy scroll it was. Rugens explained that Hesta had specifically asked him to keep it and not sell it, so he had left it there. Chris wondered why Rugens had not suggested that Hesta pay later. Rugens explained that the pay later arrangement had only been offered because it was Chris. If he handed it to Hesta first, she would simply run away. Chris thought that the two of them had known each other for a long time, but it seemed there was not much trust between them. Rugens considered that to be precisely because they had known each other for so long before asking whether Chris intended to buy the scroll.
2 platinum coins? Nah, man. Them platinum coins must be higher. Dog, that's expensive.
Chris asked how much it cost. Rugens stated that he would sell it for 2 platinum coins. Chris was shocked. In his mind, 1 platinum coin was equal to 10 gold coins. He had never expected it to be that expensive and thought the price was steep. Rugens told Chris that he had spent an entire day deciding whether he should buy the scroll or not. In the end, he still had not sold it, and no one who came to those alleys to shop was foolish enough to buy something so expensive. Because of its price, he admitted he should have asked for an advance payment, but since it was Chris, he was willing to let him pay the full amount later.
Really?
Chris was once again shocked but remained hesitant. He thought about how the purpose of the necromancy scroll was for Hesta to learn magic. Since she could not use magic at the moment, there was no hope for her. However, if she learned even a little magic, she would definitely become a valuable asset. Joining forces with them would also benefit him, but he could not burden himself with debt solely because of Hesta. Appreciating Rugens' generosity, Chris declined the offer for the time being. Rugens considered it a shame but assured him that if he ever decided to buy it, he only needed to return and find him. Chris thanked him. Later, Chris checked the plants he had collected. Since he had some spare money, he planned to visit the church to check whether his status had changed. During his previous trip to the forest, He had gathered several poisonous plants, dried them, and eaten half of them. He bought one leaf. The more poisonous plants he consumed, however, the more bitter they became. He felt that he needed to study better ways to eat them. During the previous check, both his endurance and muscle strength had increased by 1. If both increased by another point this time, he could conclude that the remaining poisonous plants would not further enhance his abilities. However, it would be troublesome if only one attribute increased, leaving him hoping that luck would not turn against him.
He wants to be so lucky that he at least got a skill that updated itself. Cause man, Chris, if I was you, I would die if none of my skills advanced this much. Christopher, you're having a good journey, man. But this journey sucks.
After entering the church, Graham noticed Chris. Chris thought that if the church did not know what he was doing, they would probably assume he came only to throw money at them. He greeted Graham and apologized for troubling him again. Graham asked whether he wanted another ability check, noting that it had not been long since the previous one. Chris replied that even if his abilities had not changed, he would not complain. Graham accepted this and led him to the room. When the examination
was like, it's you again. Yay, man. You advanced.
Was finished, Graham returned Chris's card and remarked that even if his abilities had not changed, he was certain Chris's determination had not been in vain, expressing the hope that Chris understood that. Chris narrowed his eyes and replied that he already knew and that Graham did not need to repeat the same thing over and over again. Graham looked away, apologized for being persistent, and excused himself. After checking his card, Chris found that the only changes were increases to his endurance, muscle strength, and stamina. This time, both endurance and muscle strength had increased by 1 on the left side, while there was no change on the right side. He concluded that the increase was most likely the result of his own efforts after a month of hunting demons. He wondered how many demons he had hunted over the course of that month for his abilities to increase by only as much as they had from eating poisonous plants. On the other hand, those poisonous plants possessed the hidden ability to make him stronger. Among the poisonous plants he had eaten this time, however, there had been no type capable of enhancing his abilities. What concerned him most was the possibility that drying them had rendered them ineffective. He decided that he would eat the remaining 15 types and check his status again to make sure. As he walked back home, Chris became puzzled when he reached the door. Hesta and Ralph were kneeling in front of him. Chris froze and asked what they were doing. Hesta was about to answer, but Ralph stopped her from speaking. Hesta then called out to Chris and explained that they had become strong enough to defeat goblins with ease. She asked him to join their party. Chris had already noticed that they used to return home completely exhausted, but lately they had been spending their time relaxing instead. He had thought the moment would come eventually, although it had arrived much sooner than he expected.
Damn.
Chris agreed and decided that he would accompany them the following day to see how they performed. Hesta thanked him and insisted that Ralph do the same.
Ralph, thank him.
Ralph reluctantly thanked Chris. Chris thought that if they truly could defeat goblins so easily, forming a party with them would be beneficial. He handed them some grilled skewers, explaining that he had bought them and wanted them to try them. Ralph was delighted to see the grilled skewers again, while Hesta thanked Chris. That night, Chris crossed out another entry on his list. The poisonous herbs he had eaten that day had not enhanced his abilities, so he decided to disregard those remaining 15 types of plants in the future. Although it had cost money and required considerable...
You should blend them down and drink them. There's no thingy here, but just blend them down and drink them all. Combine with water. It could
effort to prepare them. He did not consider it too much trouble when it came to becoming stronger. A short while later, Ralph approached him and asked about the pile of dried grass. Chris explained that it was probably fatal. Ralph was shocked and wondered why Chris had brought something like that home. Chris told him that it would be fine as long as he did not eat it. Ralph asked whether Chris had brought the leaves home to sell and whether that was why he had extra money. Chris explained that it was not what Ralph thought. The dried leaves were for him to eat, reminding Ralph that he had already mentioned his poison nullification skill. Ralph could not understand why someone with such a skill would intentionally eat poisonous dried grass and wondered if it was really that delicious. Chris admitted that it tasted terrible. Silence followed. At the beginning of Chapter 9, they were in the forest. Hesta was panting, and Ralph was gasping for air. Chris looked back at them. Ralph wondered why they had left so early and questioned whether it was because of his leg, believing that he was the one slowing everyone down. Chris crouched in front of him and told Ralph to climb onto his back. Ralph was shocked and insisted that he was
I can walk, man. Don't make me look like a baby.
fine and could walk on his own. Chris replied that Ralph was too slow and warned that if he was unwilling to work as a team, he would cancel the plan to form a party. Ralph shivered as Hesta stared at him. Later, Chris set Ralph back down. He told Hesta and Ralph to show him how easily they could hunt goblins. The two agreed. Hesta told Ralph that they would do it the same way they always did, and Ralph agreed, telling her to leave it to him. They walked forward together until they heard something rustling. Hesta signaled everyone to stop and pointed at a goblin. She followed it before suddenly dashing forward and striking it from behind. The goblin merely touched its head, turned toward Hesta, and smirked. Hesta ran, and the goblin chased after her. Ralph suddenly appeared, aimed at the goblin, and stabbed it, killing it. Hesta asked Chris what he thought, believing that although it was a little sloppy, they were properly hunting goblins. Chris admitted that he had been wondering how the two of them hunted together, but now he understood. Hesta lured the goblins toward Ralph, who could not run, and Ralph—
Oh, makes sense. Makes sense. She lures, he strikes, they're done.
finished them off. Satisfied with their teamwork, Chris agreed to form a party with them. Hesta was delighted. Ralph, still grumpy, questioned why they needed to form a party when they could already handle goblins on their own. Hesta remarked that he was acting like that again before angrily asking whether he truly wanted to spend his entire life as a rookie adventurer hunting nothing but goblins.
Hesta she's like, "Are you crazy? We can't just hunt these damn pennies for 40 years." She's like, "We can't hunt pennies for 40 years."
Ralph claimed that he had only been joking. Hesta told Chris that she would be counting on him from then on. Chris replied that he would also be counting on both of them. He then said that he would head back first and that they could discuss the details that night. Hesta agreed and said she would see him later that evening. Ralph protested because they had just formed a party yet were not even going to hunt together. Back at the inn, Hesta announced their return, and Chris welcomed them back. Ralph showed Chris something, explaining that they had bought him some grilled skewers. Chris remarked that it seemed they had been thinking the same thing because he had also bought a variety of food. Ralph looked puzzled, and Chris explained that it was the day they had officially formed a party. Ralph muttered that they had not needed to buy anything, though he admitted that a few more skewers would not hurt. Chris revealed that what he had bought was not skewers. Ralph and Hesta were shocked. He had bought Saika Manju's pork buns, sashimi from Maruha, and
Where you get this money from?
seasoned rice from Maruha Diner. Ralph exclaimed that they were all dishes from the famous restaurants they had always wanted to try, and Hesta was equally amazed. Ralph turned to Chris in excitement and asked whether they could really eat them as well. Chris replied that, of course, they could because they were a party now. Ralph and Hesta smiled at each other, and the three of them heartily enjoyed the meal together. After they finished eating, Chris asked what their goal would be from that point onward. Hesta and Ralph were confused. Chris added that rather than having a vague goal of simply adventuring together, he wanted to know whether they had a clear purpose. Ralph thought for a moment and suggested that making sure they always had plenty to eat was good enough. Chris pointed out that they were already eating well as things were. Hesta said that she wanted to become a mage and earn money, wondering whether it was acceptable since it was only a personal goal. Chris replied that a personal goal was perfectly fine. However, he asked whether she would leave the party once she became a mage and started making money. Hesta hesitated. She had no intention of leaving, but before she could finish explaining herself, Ralph admitted that he did not understand what Chris was getting at and asked him to say it plainly. Chris revealed that his own goal was to take revenge on his younger brother and, if possible, accomplish it while remaining a member of their party.
Oh, he wants to stay the party, brother. Well, he doesn't want to leave. Hey, he likes you guys, at least.
Hesta asked what he meant. Ralph asked whether Chris intended to kill his younger brother. Chris confirmed that he did.
Oh, he is.
Ralph was shocked and insisted that Chris should do it on his own. Chris replied that if he were capable of doing it alone, he would not be discussing it with them. Ralph hesitated, pointing out that the target was still Chris's younger brother. Chris's expression turned grim as he admitted that his younger brother was someone who stood on the verge of becoming the strongest person alive. Hesta asked whether there was a reason Chris wanted to kill his younger brother. That night, Chris explained everything to them. Ralph finally understood why Chris had fled into the forest. Chris added that if he had not tripped at that moment, he would have been killed. Every time he remembered it, he found it impossible to forgive Klaus. If Klaus ever found him, Chris was certain that Klaus would kill him without hesitation. Hesta understood why Chris wanted revenge, even against his own family. Ralph admitted that after hearing Chris's story, he understood the feeling. Even though his stepfather was already dead, Ralph had still wanted to kill him. Even so, he had no intention of helping Chris carry out his revenge. Chris replied that it was fine and that having them understand his situation was enough. Ralph suddenly recalled the poisonous dried grass Chris had kept the previous night and wondered whether it had been meant to kill his brother. Chris denied it, explaining that it had been for him to eat. He had never believed he could poison the sword god, and even if he could, he would not choose such a method. Ralph then asked what the dried grass actually was. Chris remarked that the timing was perfect because he had intended to tell them after they formed a party. He explained that it was a poisonous herb capable of drawing out hidden abilities, allowing the body to gradually grow stronger when consumed. Ralph questioned whether such a plant really existed because he had never heard